As you heal, you become less willing to dilute yourself. You are more likely to show up with the fullness of who you are, by Dr. Thema. Hey everybody, it's Tuesday, another episode of the Toy Talks podcast. We're really racing to the end of the year, and I am so happy to be delivering this episode to you. We're going to have some dilemmas. There's a couple of dilemmas that came through last week that I really want to cover. It's really, really important. But before we get into all of that, I wanted to read out a comment that was left under a picture that I posted on the Toy Talks handle on Instagram. So if you're not following already, the Toy Talks Instagram page is Toya_Talks. And I've made a commitment to be a bit more present on social media. I think because there's so much going on and all the Toy Talk stuff that I'm working on, sometimes I don't always have the opportunity to really engage in social media, especially the Toy Talks social media platform. So I've made a commitment that that's something that I'm going to focus on. So obviously, last week's episode was about barriers to entry, but more so from the perspective as us as Black women being our own barriers to entry. And I'll go into a lot of detail about that. If you haven't listened, go ahead and have a listen. The feedback has been absolutely fantastic. So I posted a picture, and the picture was quite a strong picture, and it was a sea of white men. It looks like an office, and there's one Black woman, and she looks like she's having an interview, and the caption reads, "Describe what you can bring to this company." So underneath that picture, I left a comment and I read, "This is what barrier to entry looks like. In a sea full of white people, the question arises, what do you think you can bring to the company? The irony. But we also have to consider our barriers of the mind and the limiting thoughts that prevent us from applying for those senior roles and entering spaces because we think we don't deserve to be there. Suffering and age isn't a qualification that then permits you to then apply for these roles you deem as out of your reach. Give yourself permission to succeed. Take those risks required to get to the next level of your career. I got to where I am in my career because I believed in the possibility that success was mine for the taking. So I took it." So I had, a couple of people leave some comments, but today I had a comment now, and she writes, "No disrespect, but you have reached the level you are at by pursuing further education, i.e. master's degree, etc. Without knowledge and education, you cannot easily reach your potential. Some people have good work experience, but the opportunity to obtain a formal education to advance their career has not been possible due to finance, personal reasons, etc. You are very lucky, but I think you are wrong to assume that anyone can achieve what you have." And then I responded, "I suggest you actually listen to my podcast. The statements you have made are filled with presumption and a lack of actual facts. I am not lucky. No luck was involved. I am from a poor background, originally from Tottenham. I am dyslexic. I'm not wrong to assume anything because I do not make assumptions. I am an example of what working hard with the odds stacked against you looks like. You sound a little salty, which is weird, but not surprising when your comment is based on assumptions, lack of actual knowing me and my story, or the path that I have walked to get here." Then she responded, and you know what I did? I deleted her response because I'm not going to go back and forth. I am having the last word because you wanted to leave something on my platform, and therefore I get to have the last word. You don't get a rebuttal. You don't, because this is not a negotiation or a conference. This is my response. I get really, really angry when I see fellow Black people, because with white or other non-Black people, one can make an assumption or even understand that they feel a certain way because of race or because of the constant disparity and the barriers in which we are breaking as Black people. But when a Black person comes to a fellow Black person and talks about luck, do you know how disrespectful that is? So when you say you mean no disrespect, you mean every disrespect. And I'm going to gather your edges together because your edges in your picture seems to be missing. I'm going to gather them for you right now. How dare you tell me that it was luck when I know that what my background is? My parents came here, first generation immigrants from Nigeria, with nothing. They had me and my brother, and literally we suffered. And my parents tried to protect us as much as they could. It would be the lack of electricity. It would be the lack of food. But you know what? They made it work for us. Anything that you see that I've achieved in my education has been like everybody else has. I don't know one person in my friendship circle or as associates who went to university because their parents paid for it. We went to university on a student loan like everybody else. Because if your family earned a certain amount of money, you didn't have access to the student finance. But obviously, because of my background, like everybody else, there's no difference. I was able to access student finance and get a loan to go to university and do my degree. And during my degree, it was hell. I'm not going to sit here and like sugarcoat it for you. I barely scraped the first year. I know I had to hold down 2 jobs while I was at university. Yes, I was working at Topshop and I was working in Tesco's. So when you talk about the access to finance and people not really having the opportunity because of the lack of access to finance, well, we're all in that boat, darling. I'm in that boat right with everybody else. I wasn't given a silver, gold, or bronze spoon. I have walked those hard coals like everybody else. If you want me to talk about how I financed my master's, girl, you should have just said, I'm an open book. I will tell you. After I finished my degree, I was traumatized, you know, because even though I finished the degree, I felt as though I didn't know what to do next. So I was working, I had odd jobs here and there. And then I had to go to law school. My dad had to borrow the money to send me to law school. And when I say borrow, I mean against our home. Yes, you heard me. I had to hold down 2 jobs to pay my father back. Because my dad still had a home to look after. He still had my brothers. He still had my mum. I was scrubbing toilets. During the day, I was working in retail. I was scrubbing toilets. I'm not ashamed to say it. Because maybe I haven't said it, or I don't know, like no one's really asked me. But my thing is, rather than attack the process, because I feel like she's attacking the process and she's disrespecting me when you're basically using luck to describe what I have achieved, when I know that I've made the sacrifices and I've taken the calculated risk and I've been strategic to get here. So we're going to do this story. If that's what you want to do, I have no problem. But don't come to me with this vibe, this negative vibe that has possessed you to come and write this nonsense. And if you think that you're going to get another response out of me after this podcast episode, baby girl, no, you're not that important. You need to employ the energy that you're using here to go and make the same sacrifices that I needed to make to get to where I needed to be, where you need to go. Anyway. So I was scrubbing toilets. There's a company, you guys have heard of an investment company called Merrill Lynch. I was working for a cleaning company and one of my patches was a Merrill Lynch office. Let me just be honest. Yes, no one's ever asked me, so it's not like I've deliberately kept it. But I'd rather people ask me than assume luck. So I would do my master's, and as in doing my master's, I'd go to my job during the day, and in the evening, I was scrubbing toilets. The only time that I was, say, available, I wasn't working, was Sundays. So that's where I try to get all my assignments done and everything. So those dried shit from those investment bankers in that toilet bowl, I was scrubbing it. I was on my hands and knees scrubbing it. I was cleaning them offices to pay my father back. When I managed to pay all the money back that I'd borrowed from my dad, I decided that I'd do a master's, and it wasn't one after the other. There was like a year or 2 in between, because you have to recover from, number one, the education you've put yourself through, the trauma of having to afford that education. But thirdly, I had to know whether, the next stage of my education is something I was willing to do. I applied for a bursary. I didn't get the bursary to do the master's. So you know what I did? I went straight back to my cleaning job to afford my master's. Yes, that's what I did. I did nights. So during the day, I was doing my master's. At night, I was cleaning toilets. I wasn't doing the retail job anymore. I just, it just didn't work. It wasn't working with my lifestyle. So when you talk about, she says, due to finance and personal reasons, I'm so sorry. I'm really, really sorry. If I can do it, everybody else can do it. I'm not having these personal reasons in finance. Finance is not the reason. When you can do those jobs that you wouldn't ordinarily take. I was treated like shit. But I did it. Do you know why I did it? Because I knew what I wanted to achieve. I wanted my master's. And there were times that I didn't want to go to my night jobs. There was times I didn't want to. But you know what kept me going? I was almost at the finish line. Every day that passed was a closer day to the finish line of getting that money together. And the worst part of it is with the masters, they take it in chunks. So in the summer holidays, I'm working. I suffered. When I look back at it, I shudder. I actually shudder. I do. You know, when she talks about you were very lucky, but I think it's wrong to assume that anyone can achieve what you have. The problem is the barrier to entry episode where we talk about the self-limiting beliefs where you believe that you cannot achieve. You shouldn't want to achieve what I've had. You should want more. You should want more. And you shouldn't look at somebody else's achievements and line yourself up in parallel with what that achievement looks like. Because you don't know what I've achieved, baby girl. You do not know. The roof over my head, I paid for, darling. I left home at 21. I've never not worked. Been that checkout girl asking for extra shifts. Can you believe that when I was working in Tesco's, the cleaning company that was contracted to clean the Tesco's I worked at, I asked them if I could do, when I'm not working at Tesco's and when I'm not at law school, can I do some cleaning? And they said yes for 6 months. So I will go to Tesco to do checkout girl, and I will go to Tesco's to also clean, as well as my night shift, as well as doing my assignments. Don't come here and tell me that. And remember, I'm dyslexic. So I'm still figuring out how I learn. Listen, no. I'm not going to take that level of disrespect. It's never going to happen. Do you understand? I demand my flowers, and I give the flowers to myself that I demand. This lady, I'm going to tell you this right now. As I'm looking at this and I'm reading this, because when she responded to me, I think I read the first 3 lines, I just deleted. It was full of trash. It's not about being defensive. It's also not about being presumptuous. You are assuming something that is completely wrong. You don't know me. You don't know me. You don't know my story. You don't know where I've been. You don't know where I've come from. But what you are never going to do, ever going to do, is right under any of my platforms where other black women have taken the tools that they need to go and succeed to try and almost make it seem as though achieving what I have is not within the reach or realms of possibility for other women. That's bullshit. Because I've got women who have achieved more than what I have achieved at their age. So don't go here with that. The problem that we have as a community of black women is that rather than understand the level of sacrifice, we're looking for the easy way out. Some of us are. Some of us are so self-limiting in our belief that when we see other people achieving, we try and poke holes in their achievements to make us feel better about the lack of achievement and ambition in which we have not employed in our own lives. Do you not think I see people better than me? There's people who have achieved far more than me. But I'm on my own journey and my own trajectory. Not everybody has access to education in this here London. That's a bullshit. Everybody in the UK has access to some form of formal education. Formal education doesn't have to be a degree. It doesn't have to be a master's. You have NVQs, you have HDC or HNC, you have all different types of levels of qualification, but people have access to it. Are you mad and dumb and mad at the same time? This level 4 diploma that I did in procurement and supply, you guys who follow me on Snapchat saw that journey. I was going to work with all of you in the morning, was I not? I was going to work with all of you in the morning. I will finish work and straight, no break, go for evening classes to go and do that level 4. You guys, I showed you guys saw it with your eyes. Why do you think I was showing you that? I wanted you guys to see that there's no exception to the rule. There's no handout to the rule. I'm doing what you guys are doing. We were going to work sometimes I was even going on the train and see some of you there that have been on my Snap. In the night, after I finish my course, 10, I will get home at 12. I'm on that same train and I will meet some of you on the train. You'll tell me, oh, Toya, we watch your snaps. To show you that I'm not doing anything more special than any of you. But the difference is I am doing it. Whereas some people have all these fantasy of dreams of everything, but they're not actually putting an action plan together to execute it. So there was no luck involved in anything. I wish there was luck. Do you know why? Because then I wouldn't have had to suffer. Because as I'm making all these sacrifices, I'm still holding down a full-time job, navigating work as a black woman, being told I can't, being put down, macro aggressions, discrimination. I was bullied in workplaces where people are throwing pieces of paper at me across the room at me because they're not happy with the legal advice I'm giving them. That's people that I work with throwing pieces of paper at me. That same evening now, I will now go to night job and then reignite the flame of work again the next day. How dare you? How dare you message me this type of a message and you don't even know my fucking story? You think that I'm doing Toya Talks because it's beans. I'm doing Toya Talks because even when people are making the sacrifice, navigating work is still a challenge, and the structure of navigating the world of work eludes people. But I've navigated work to a success level that I'm proud of. But there are things that I went through that I didn't have to, or things I didn't deal with well, or things that I could have avoided. This is what I use this platform to teach, educate, and motivate black women how to navigate the world of work and light up the path of their success. To light up the path of your success, you have to be in the game. You have to participate in the game, sister. Those jobs that you're talking about, did I come out of my mother's womb straight into a job? No. I was a babysitter. I was a PA. Yes. I was an assistant. Yes. All those jobs, retail, I was a cleaner before I started now. Are you joking me? But people want this fast track to success. There is no fucking fast track to success as a black person in this country. There's no fast track. There is the strategic track. And that's what I'm teaching you. This is what I'm teaching you. I'm so sorry. Yes, I've always preached on this podcast about education. It doesn't matter the type of education, but you need a form of education. I have never, ever not said that you need education. Me, I have it. Why would I say people, you have to have education? Even if you want to be anything in the way, if you want to be a nurse, a midwife, there's a path of education you have to go through to access that level of career, isn't it? Yes, but you do have to make the sacrifice. I'm sorry. Because unless your parents are rich, unless your parents have given you a silver spoon, unless now you have one type of inheritance that has sorted you for the rest of your life, you do have to make those sacrifices. Finances is not an excuse, I'm sorry. Because this day and age, they've got GoFundMe. This day and age, they've got GoFundMe. In my time, we didn't have no GoFundMe. You know what we had? A begging bowl. We had a begging bowl and a hustler mentality. That's what we had. You guys got GoFundMe. I never had, listen, people grow up with social media. I didn't grow up with social media, you know. So it wasn't like I could ask people for help. And even if I could, I don't think I would have. I was prepared to scrub toilets of shit. If the toilet flooded and my shift was on, guess who had to help clean that flooded toilet? Yeah. Or if I'm cleaning the office with the Hoover and the Hoover stops working, guess whose neck is on the line that could even dock your wages for it? I was working in offices in places where I didn't even think that I could possibly be. This is why when I work in certain places, I see the cleaners, I chat to them. They're all my friends, I get on with them. Because I know, I've been there, where people just assume that because you're a cleaner, you know nothing else. When actually, there is a doctor as one of those cleaners. There's a trainee doctor as one of those cleaners. Trainee pharmacist is one of those cleaners. Trainee lawyer is one of those cleaners. I was one of those people. So when you see the designer bags, designer glasses, designer this, designer that, when you see the roof over my head, just understand that there was a level of sacrifice that was sown into the world that allowed me to reap what I have. And I speak passionately because I'm sick and tired of self-limiting ideas and thoughts that prevent us from achieving. I don't believe that. So if you're looking for a pity party, this is not where you're going to get anybody in attendance. But when I see it's a black woman writing this, I'm so sorry. Do you know when I see black people, black women especially in the world of work, when I look at her, I see myself. I know that she struggled. I know that she's sacrificed. And I know that she's coming to work with a level of trauma. I respect the journey. There is no luck involved. There's just strategy. I've studied the world of work. I've studied the white middle class people that have access through privilege. I've studied them. I've studied organizations whereby ordinarily the barrier to entry would just be being black. I've worked there. I've worked in those organizations, not just as the cleaner. I entered as the cleaner and I left as a senior. I left as a... Do you understand? Do you understand how trippy it is to know that I was cleaning the toilets of these offices? And now I work in these offices as senior manager, contract management department, senior contract manager, negotiating multi-million pound contracts, now running my own business, contracting as a contract consultant, running businesses, doing what I love to do, walking in my purpose and living in my passions and doing the things that make me happy, finding a career that not only I'm good at, that I genuinely am passionate about and love. If anyone ever told me that I'd work for Goldman Sachs, which to me at the time was very elite, I would never have believed it. Little old me. Little old me from Tottenham. No way. And the thing is, the access to be able to even see that as a possibility was when in school, the outside, it was weird. It was like I couldn't really see the outside world's potential outside of my environment. It was the teachers that came in to taught us with their polished shoes and their weird posh accents that enabled me to know that there was a world outside of this bubble that had been created for me. I remember, people ask me all the time, like, Toya, like, you've got such high taste. Where does it come from? Oh, my obsession with designer bags. And let me tell you, I would get on that train to go to work. I'd get on the train. So Victoria Line, Seven Sisters, all my North London heads, I would get on the train and I would see these women dressed in beautiful suits and trousers and just outfits, and their bags were always so nice. I looked at their bags. I said, one day I'm going to get a bag like that. And every time I got on a train to my cleaning job or to my office job, whatever job I was in, every time I would go, I would always be motivated by those women with their beautiful designer bags. And I always said to myself, when I'm at that level whereby I can afford these things, I will give myself these things. That's why I reward myself unapologetically. That's where it comes from. And it may sound silly to you, but I'm sorry. How I grew up, spending or even envisioning designer bags, you have to eat. So that's not even in so far as the bag you have, even if it has holes, so far as it can still hold things, that's what you're using. And I feel like when people see people who have achieved things, they use luck. Don't ever use luck to describe what I've achieved. I find it really, really, really insulting. Really insulting. It's insulting to my parents' sacrifices. It's insulting to the sacrifices that I've made. And it's insulting to the achievements that I've managed to achieve, because luck wasn't involved. But if I can be an example to other Black women of what success could look like, or an example to Black women of how to navigate the workplace successfully and teach them how to do it even better than me, that to me is success. That's part of my success story. I had a call last week with a young lady in which she'd reached out to the Toy Talks brand and basically wanted me to come and do a talk for their organization, big organization. And I always ask to speak to the organizer at least a week before as a check-in. It's partly so that, number one, I can feel the pulse of the direction of the talk. Number two, so that I make sure that what I'm preparing to deliver is on track. And number three, it's always good for me on a personal level just to meet that person to see what they're about. But this particular young lady follows the Toy Talks brand. So she's a very important person in bridging that gap between me and her organization. She bridged that gap. As we were talking, and I was explaining the things that I'm preparing, I asked her a couple of questions, and she showed me things on. She said to me, Toya, you won't remember this, but I reached out to you a while back because I was stagnant in my career. I wasn't very happy. And you gave me some advice that, to be quite honest, I sit here before you now, doing the job I do in the organization I do it in, because you gave me advice that has literally taken me to where I am now. Do you know that my eyes started watering? Yeah, it did. Because as I looked at this black, beautiful queen, I realized that the sacrifices I'd made in my own life were sowing seeds. And I'm looking at the harvesting of these seeds with this black woman and many, many other black women who have shared their story with me. Very well spoken, well put together. If you see her, I was so proud of her. If you hear her job title, I was very proud. And she said, you have helped me so much in my career. I need other black people to hear you speak, to hear your story, so that you can impart that same knowledge onto them to propel them to the next stage of their career. And in that conversation, she'd basically summed up what the Toya Talks platform was about. So when I hear things like luck, I'm really sorry, but the oppressive structure that's been created to benefit people who are non-black use the word luck, and they misuse it when they now talk about black people, because there's nothing about us that has been lucky. In fact, our race has been unfortunate to have gone through the level of trauma that we have done historically. We are now how many years after all that slave trade and everything else that has encompassed the black history to where we are now. And we are still now having to navigate the treacherous waters of the office. And we are doing so unapologetically. My dear, drop me out with that luck rubbish. Access to what? I do not assume that anyone can achieve what I have, but I make the assumption that black women can achieve more than what I have, because I continue to open the door. I continue to use my platform and share the strategies. So black women who follow the Toya Talks platform, who have benefited from the Toya Talks platform, can be better than me. I don't know everything, and I'm all for constructive discussions, conversations. I am open to hearing what people say and also their experiences. But what I'm not open to is disrespect. I'm not open to receiving disrespect because people feel that they have access to someone because of social media. If you have a different viewpoint, by all means, please share it, but do it in a respectful way. Because when I deliver my platform, when I deliver my podcast, I do it in a respectful way, completely understanding that I do not know everything. I have not been through everything, but I'm creating a platform to be able to share so people can grow. That is the premise of Toya Talks. If it's the fact that we are racing to the end of 2020 and people's madness are accelerating, or whether people are just committed to being dickheads. I don't know which one it is, which side of the fence people are sitting. Obviously, I've been speaking quite recently about the effects on the commercial space in terms of organisations and how organisations are adapting or are not adapting to the new way of working, the pandemic, and how recruitment is becoming a lot more difficult in terms of finding the right candidates, because there's now a larger pool of candidates. So for every one job where you might have 10 people, you probably have about 50. So from the perspective of prospective employees, it's quite a difficult market at the moment. And for recruiters who have not adapted to the new way of working and the new way of recruitment, are finding recruitment really difficult. I had a young lady reach out to me on Snapchat, and ordinarily I don't really accept dilemmas via Snapchat. I'd always encourage people to email hello@toytalks.com. However, this young lady reached out and she said to me, Toya, literally in the last 24 hours I've been fired from my job. So I'm just going to give you a high level overview of kind of what's happened with this young lady. So she works in a specific industry, and I don't want to name the industry because obviously anyone that writes in or anyone that has a dilemma is kept anonymous. So this particular industry that she's in, I think she said that she'd been there for about 8 months, and within that 8-month period she found out that apparently she wasn't performing very well. Apparently her colleagues and some of the clients had been complaining that she wasn't performing the role very well. And the manager basically warned her that you need to improve and we're going to keep an eye on you. Now, whenever somebody says we will keep an eye on you, it sounds like a threat to me. And you need to improve is not really constructive when somebody, or there has been a complaint about somebody's performance. But we'll get onto that a bit later. Now, she said to me she hadn't got any adequate training from the point in which she started until the present day. And that there had been a past incident, where the manager had basically shouted at her in the middle of the office. Now, I need to add something here. This is a family-run business. Now, in my entire career, I've always stayed away from family-run businesses because they ran like family. And when you have a family-run business, it's too emotive. There's too much, there's a lack of process. I find that with family-run businesses, everything is personal and they don't stick to any type of employment rules. And that's just my experience vicariously through friends who have worked for family-run businesses. And she said that the wife of the manager was like really nice and basically, you know, telling her that they're going to give her feedback and things like that. Now, when they said to her that, you know, we're going to keep an eye on you, you need to improve, she's very honest here. She says, you know what, Toya, I need to take the L for this because I never really put anything in writing, but more importantly, at the point in which I was kind of given this warning to improve, I should have been looking for a new role, right? So she's holding her hands up. So basically, when she came to me and she asked me this question, sorry, that's my phone. I said to her, okay, what is your objective? What is it that you want? She said to me, listen, I want my job back. I said, babes, that's not going to happen. I need you to know that getting your job back is not going to happen because you had this warning and then a few months later they fired you in the middle of the office. No warning, no letter, no nothing. So when you say you want your job back, why would you want to go back to that environment? Why would you want to be so uncomfortable that from one day to the next, you ain't even going to know if you have a job role? And I understand that we're in a pandemic, it's a global pandemic, and that the job market isn't very good. But equally, I will choose my mental health and my sanity every time over a job that is affecting my mental health and my sanity, because what it means is that I won't be able to do the job properly anyway. So she then sent me an email, and I'm going to read this email out to you. We're going to call this young lady Debbie. So she's entitled this Debbie email contract, and then she put confirmation. So I'm assuming that when she was offered the job, this was the email confirmation of that job. Dear Debbie, this is further to our meeting in our offices yesterday. I'm writing to confirm our offer of the position of This position is offered subject to satisfactory references and pre-employment checks and completion of the 3-month probation period, during which time your performance will be reviewed. This is a permanent position and you will therefore be entitled to all staff benefits. Please let us have your acceptance and let us know your joining date as soon as possible. You will be paid at a rate of per annum. This will be reviewed within the next 3 to 6 months. Your salary will be paid directly into your bank account on the last day of every month. You'll be entitled to 20 days holiday pro rata plus bank holidays. The holiday year runs from April to March. The normal office hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. with an hour's lunch break. Please bring along your passport as well as a proof of current address on your first day at work. As discussed, you are entitled to our firm's study assistance, which includes payment of home study or online courses, registration and examination fee. I look forward to receiving your confirmation regarding your joining date. We'd like you to join us as soon as possible and preferably on Monday, the 9th of December 2019. Please let me know if this cannot be achieved for some reason. We are looking forward to working with you and hope you will soon feel part of the team. If you have any questions, contact me. Many thanks. Now, I want this young lady to know that, first of all, this is not a contract of employment by any means. And I have to say as well that when she was telling me about her being fired, she also made clear that she had never been given a contract of employment. This email is just an offer. Now, before I go in and advise this young lady, because she asked me for advice and she's a bit worried about references and things like that, because obviously she was fired. Effectively, that's the reason why she left. So before I get into the advice, let me start with this offer letter. This offer letter is littered with issues, and I'll tell you the first issue. The first issue is there is no reference to an employment contract. It's just an offer. Ordinarily, when you are offered employment, they will say to you, this is considered an offer letter. Your employment contract will follow in due course once we've received receipt of acceptance of this offer. So in this offer letter, they make no reference to an employment contract. So already, I would be thinking, what's going on here? Secondly, in this offer letter, he asks, when do you want to start? Like, we want you to join all of this. And then you've actually written preferably on so-and-so date. So you even want me to start when I want to start, or you have a date in mind, and therefore you need to ask me whether I can start on this date. So already I'd think, okay, you know what? I don't understand why he's not being consistent here. And what would really make me slightly uncomfortable is more about the fact that there is no employment contract. And I have to say, this young lady has to hold the L, because your employment contract is your responsibility to ask for. I personally have never, in my 35 years of life, ever had an employment where I have not had an employment contract. I won't work without one. I just won't. Now, there are people who don't have employment contracts, right? But the law basically says that you're allowed to ask for a written statement of terms. Now, somebody can say, actually, Toya, is this email not a written statement of terms? No, it's not, because it's an offer where they've asked her to come back with whether, number one, she accepts, and number two, what date she's going to start. So this is not a written statement of terms. I think the law states it's either 2 to 3 months after your employment starts that you're allowed to ask for that written statement of terms. In fact, I put it to you that during the course of your employment, you should be able to ask for a written statement of terms. In those terms, it should have your holiday entitlement. It should have some policies. I mean, even in the offer letter, they refer to staff benefits. What are those staff benefits? Where are those work policies? Where are the adjustment policies for this employment? There's so many things that are missing and that would be found in an employment contract. And if it's not in the employment contract, there should be some type of a handbook that accompanies the employment contract. So that is the first thing that jumps out at me. Now, when I asked this young lady what her objective is, apart from her wanting her job back, the other things were that she wanted holiday pay. I think they already offered to give her her full month's salary. And also as well, she wants a reference. So in her state of emotion, I said to her, I don't want you to write anything for the next couple of days. I've got an episode going out on Tuesday and I will basically advise you on the episode. So as it stands at today's date, she hasn't actually gone back to the employer. Now they do have a HR person, and this is a HR person and not a HR department. Now, ordinarily, HR should then get in contact with you. You've been fired, right? They should formalise everything in writing and basically detail what things are going to be owed to you, etc., etc. But because it's a family-run business, because this business literally has no structure and no real way of managing their employees, it is not surprising that the unprofessionalism has seeped through even in this young lady's case. So I'm going to put this to you. You, I think, need to write a letter. Now, one of the things she did say is that she's already started paying for her exams. And they promised that they would pay for the exams. So obviously they haven't done so. Now, my thing would always be, if an organisation offers to pay for your exams, you need to get the money beforehand or get a PO so that you're not really out of pocket. The fact that you're out of pocket, now you're trying to go back to them and say, actually, you said, you know, it's a bit difficult, but I guess you have the offer letter, and it does make reference to that here in the offer letter. But again, if you had an employment contract or a written statement of terms, it would have been more easy to enforce. But let's try it anyway. So I think that the letter should go to an email. It should go to human resources, and you need to copy in the manager that sacked you, who also owns the business, and his wife. We're going to call HR Simon. Hi, Simon. It is regret that I have to write to you, and with a heavy heart, you are aware that I was sacked on 1st of October 2020. The reason for my firing, which was cited, is my performance. This is the second time my performance has been called into question. But this is also the second time in which I have not been provided with adequate training and a detailed explanation about what in particular about my performance is below standard, full stop. I have looked on my email and I have not found any type policies that deal with gross misconduct or a lack of performance. And I would like to understand exactly what policy is being followed here, full stop. I have again taken the opportunity to look through my document, and I was never provided with an employment contract. Under the employment law rules, an employment contract or a written statement should be provided to an employee within 3 months of their employment, full stop. I would also like to make clear that my humiliating firing, which was done in the middle of the office, has not only been detrimental to my mental health, but seriously undermined my credibility and professionalism to other members of staff. As at today's date, I've received no communication from yourself or the manager in question, the owner of the organisation who fired me. I would like the following information to be provided as soon as possible and confirmation. 1. You have confirmed, or it has been confirmed, that I will be paid until the end of the month. I would like you to confirm this in writing. Number 2. I also would like confirmation of the amount due for my study assistance. I am happy to provide you with any receipts that you require as proof that I have paid with my own money towards my study. Please also find attached written confirmation of an offer letter that was sent to me at the beginning of my employment. The attached email contains the terms of the offer and the only terms that have ever been given to me. These are the terms in which I accepted this employment, which includes study assistance, full stop. Number 3, I believe that my employment rights and my human rights were contravened in the way I was treated and then fired from this employment. I therefore put it to you that if the right process was followed, there would have been a verbal warning, a written warning, and then by consequence, a letter informing me that my role has been rescinded. Nothing of the sort has ever been provided to me. In fact, I put it to you that there has been no due process followed. Therefore, I believe that there has been an infringement of my employment and human rights, and I am seeking legal advice in this regard. Full stop. That my firing was legitimate or followed any due process, I would ask that a review is held as to why I was fired and the reasons. I ask for this because this firing considerably impacts my ability to obtain future employment. I therefore suggest that, as a compromise, that it is agreed that the reason for my employment is mutual termination, and therefore I also request an agreed standard wording of a reference, of which my name, job title, and length of service are the only things confirmed in any reference request, full stop. I look forward to hearing from you in regards to my suggestion of a reference, full stop. In taking a few days to review everything, my treatment, how I was treated during my employment, my lack of employment contract, and lack of any information pertaining to how my employment is governed, I therefore am relying on employment law legislation, full stop. I also put it to you that I was bullied, humiliated, disrespected, and being the only black woman in the office, I would have expected better treatment. The same treatment that my other colleagues and counterparts have been able to receive. Unfortunately, this was not my experience, full stop. Moving forward, I would like a clean break. And that clean break consists of the things that I've pointed out in this letter. During the course of my employment, I did witness some financial practices which morally I did not agree with. So I do think that eventually I would have arrived at the decision to leave this employment. In any case, this was not the case. Full stop. In order for me to move forward and make sure that my mental health is taken care of, I would ask that this situation is wrapped up as soon as possible. I would be grateful if you could come back to me before the end of the week with your responses, and I would hope that we could find a compromise that will enable both parties to be satisfied. Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing from you. Kind regards. Now, the reason why I say also as well, please, you need to add a paragraph about your annual leave. So I'm assuming they didn't have a way of tracking that annual leave. You'll need to work out how much annual leave is owed to you. And in the points, put in annual leave prorated remaining, and then you need to work it out and basically put a sentence that you expect this to be included in your final pay, and also a P45 as well. So the reason why I've structured it like that is, number one, you and I know that you're not going to get your employment back and you shouldn't want to, but we've addressed that earlier. Number two, you need to make it clear to them that they've breached certain employment law requirements, and also as well, they haven't followed a due process, at least a due process that has been shared with you. Number three, you're letting them know that you're seeking advice. You didn't say legal advice, or you just said advice, and you allow the reader to assume what the advice is going to be. Now, based on the information this young lady told me, they have very questionable practices, and I doubt very much they would want anything legal or any type of financial organisation sniffing around them. Therefore, it was in their best interest just to deal with this matter and close it quickly. I think something that was really, really important to this young lady is the referencing. And she said, Toya, in my, interviews and in my CV, what would I put down as the reason why I left? And I think that's such an important question. Now, if you haven't already, I have a CV masterclass on the toyatalks.com website. I talk about CVs. I talk about how to, discuss in interviews if it's raised gaps in your CVs. It's not just about how to construct a CV and how to fill out an application form. I talk about everything that is involved in a CV. So this young lady said to me that there were a lot of financial practices that were going on in that organisation that morally she didn't feel comfortable with. So when you're in an interview and they ask you why you left, you don't go and tell them that you were fired, especially that now you hopefully would have agreed some standard wording around a reference. You would basically say that. Just say, listen, there was some practices, financial irregularities that they were practicing that made me uncomfortable, and therefore I decided to leave. Full stop. Don't go into any detail. Don't give any opinion. Don't bash the organisation. Just write that, or just say that. I don't think in your CV you should ever write the reason why you left. I used to do this when I was younger, and I realised that it throws up a lot more questions. And also as well, there's always a reason why someone leaves. And when you are invited for interview, it's an opportunity for you to kind of have that conversation on a personal level. People get to know you. And therefore, when you are explaining, if it is asked why you left an organisation, it's easier to kind of frame it when you're in front of somebody watching their facial expression, rather than somebody who you haven't met and they're reading your CV. That is just my advice. If you're fired from an organisation, you wouldn't put that on a CV, would you? You wouldn't. So don't put anything on your CV that pertains to the reason why you left somewhere. The person that's going to be interviewing you left somewhere to be where they are. Do you understand? Don't give more information than you're asked for on your CV or even on a telephone call. Just keep it light, keep it brief. Don't go into any detail. And hopefully they'll agree some wording on a reference. Now, that standard reference, you could ask them to agree the wording and actually put it on a letterhead. Ask them for a letterhead. Now, organisations would prefer to approach organisations themselves for references. Some organisations don't accept you giving them a standard. And I think part of that is, one, they just want it with a recent date. They want to make sure, you know, that you did work for that organization and that the letterhead hasn't been copied from Google or something. So, I mean, you can ask for a standard reference and ask them to put the letterhead as part of like replying to your email. But you need to also make sure that organizations can approach your former employer for a reference, and it's an agreed standard wording, and any deviation will be problems for them. There have been a lot of organizations that just do standard references, name, how long you've been working there, job title, because a lot of organizations were being accused and taken to court for defamation of character, you know, writing things there that are quite either untrue or elaborate, as a way of kind of teaching a former employee a lesson, or to, you know, jeopardize that person's future job prospects. So organizations tend to stay away from anything personal. They have agreed standard wording anyway, and all you're doing is making sure that when you go into that job market and then you use this former employer as a reference, that the agreed standard wording will be used. There's no ambiguity. This young lady has been really honest in terms of what she feels that she has to hold the L's for. And I think that this organisation is going to be an example to her, and it is going to be a learning lesson for her. So the L is learning lesson. That's what the L stands for your next organisation. The only thing that worries me is the trauma. Whenever there has been a traumatic experience or traumatic departure, or both, in an organisation, you have to deal with the trauma of that, and that is a process. And unfortunately, you don't deal with that trauma in isolation. It's usually dealt with in the next job. You know, you're working through the trauma of a previous job in your next job. And this is why I said to this young lady, take a few days to yourself to process what's just happened. If you heard her voice note, she was shocked. You know, she was quite tearful. And I can completely understand it. It came from nowhere, insofar as she just wasn't expecting it that day. But the L that she agrees to hold is that she should have been looking for a job when they raised the issues in the beginning, especially because they didn't give her any support in improving. So they'd almost set her up to not kind of do well, even though they knew there were some training issues. They didn't even give her that training. So hopefully that helps this young lady. Keep me updated in terms of what happens. I suspect that everything that you would have requested in this letter I've suggested will be adhered to, because they just won't want the hassle. And if anything comes up that isn't as straightforward, then of course email hello@toytalks.com. Now moving on to the second dilemma that I received. Again, this was from Snapchat. For those of you who don't know, my Snapchat is popping. I have a lot of followers on there. If you want to follow me on Snapchat, it's Toya Washington, all one word. People who have been following me on Snapchat have been following me for a really long time, literally from the conception of Toya Talks. So sometimes I feel like there are some people who are more comfortable on Snapchat, but like I said, it's sometimes often easier for me to receive the dilemmas via email, just so that I have it there, and if I've got any further questions I can just ask via email. It's hard to keep track of dilemmas that come through on social media, to be honest. But this young lady basically sent a video dilemma, and basically it was regarding her brother-in-law. So her brother-in-law basically is working in a hostile environment. Now, he is in the creative industry and has been working there for some time. And for some reason, his team have kind of absconded and haven't actually carried out the work that they need to do. So her brother-in-law, let's call him Michael. Michael basically has taken on all the work of the team members on his own head. So as he's doing this work and trying to deliver, he received a derogatory email from a white woman who happens to be a member of staff on the same level as him. And in this email, it was derogatory, it was very insulting, there was very aggressive and I can't even say that word, but words that were quite provoking. And he responded, basically addressing the tone of the email and the aggression and some of the derogatory language used. And basically, just basically telling her that it's unacceptable that she can communicate like that with him. And in the email, it wasn't just, it was to him, but included the rest of the team. So you can imagine it's quite humiliating as well. So from what I can understand, a meeting was called, so like almost like a team meeting was called, and it was addressed. And the way it was addressed is that this black man, Michael, was gaslighted and basically told that he's exaggerating and being slightly aggressive. and that he was being too sensitive. I find that when you are the only black person in the workplace and you are talking about how something has made you feel, because you are not sitting in the majority, it's apparently all in your head. You're being gaslighted into thinking that it's a figment of your imagination. Now, this black man is the only black man in the room. There is a sea full of white people that include this white woman and the rest of the members of staff who are white, I'm assuming. The woman is on the same level as him in terms of seniority. And he basically is furious. So his sister-in-law wrote into me and said, "This is unacceptable, Toya. The language that was used, the rudeness, the humiliation, if the roles were reversed, they wouldn't accept it." And apparently the brother-in-law said it in the meeting. If this was me that wrote this wouldn't be accepted. And they said, yeah, it wouldn't be. And that was it. And that is completely unacceptable. So I asked this young lady, what does your brother-in-law want? What would be a desired outcome for him? And she said that he wants to take it all the way. Now, I don't know what all the way means, but effectively what I'm understanding from that is he's willing to basically be uncomfortable or to create a situation that's uncomfortable by raising a formal grievance complaint. And that is what I'm going to suggest that he does. Now, in this formal grievance complaint, this is how I would write it. You don't need a long story. It doesn't need to be 2 sides of an A4. It just needs to be clear enough to put down the points that need to be investigated. So dear HR. Now, this email, you need to put in the subject box, formal grievance complaint. Yeah? In that form, in the body of the email, you need to do it to HR. You need to copy in your line manager and your manager's manager and the person who the grievance complaint is about. Yes, you need to do it like that because we're all doing remote working, so we need to make sure that the email remotely gets to everybody. That's a fact. This is how you write it. Dear HR, I am writing in regards to an incident that took place on so-and-so date, in which I believe that I was racially discriminated against, humiliated, disrespected, and dealt with in an incredibly unprofessional manner. Full stop. I have taken a few days to digest what has happened. I have also taken external advice. Full stop. You see this external advice, remember I said initially on the first dilemma, they don't know what it means. They don't know if it's psychological advice. They don't know if it's legal advice. They don't know if you've taken advice from God. But that not knowing will make them shake him a little bit, uncomfortable. The same uncomfortable that they made you, you need to make them. Anyway, let's continue. On so-and-so date, an email was sent by Karen. We're going to call her Karen because she has all the ingredients of one. I have attached it for the avoidance of doubt. I therefore will make reference to it as follows. The way and manner in which I was addressed in this email was not only provoking, but had racial undertones. Because I have never seen Karen talk to any other member of staff in this manner. I am the only black man in this office, and therefore my comparator would be one of my white counterparts, in which Karen has dealt with in a lot more professional manner than she has dealt with me. I have posed the question in a team meeting that was designed to address this, that if I was the one that wrote this email, what would have been the response? I received a response from XYZ that it would have been unacceptable, and therefore there would have been consequences of writing this type of email. I therefore want to understand and want to know why there are no consequences for Karen, who is a white woman on the same level as me, that has been able to write this type of email. Karen, when confronted in a team meeting, said that she apologizes if I have taken this offensively. That is not an apology. An apology is an acceptance of responsibility and the impact of such an email going from one staff member to another. I would like to understand what your race relation policies are in terms of how members of staff treat ethnic minorities, because I have seen a disparity from how I'm treated and other members of staff. And your members of staff are majority white, and I am the only black man in this office. In undermining or seeking to undermine how I felt, how this email was received, is gaslighting. And it's a situation I take seriously. This situation is not in my head. As you can see from the attached, this incident happened. As you can see from the body of my email, when the question was posed, if I was the one that wrote this type of email, there would be consequences. I would therefore like to understand why those same consequences has not been levied to my white counterpart. Full stop. I consider this email sent by Karen as gross misconduct. I would also like to put you on notice that you have to write the name of the organization, has a duty of care to their staff. That includes me. I have been a staff member working here for, and then you write how long you've been working there for. And therefore, I expect said organization to exercise their duty of care towards my mental health, which has severely been affected by this incident and the subsequent meeting that took place, in which I was made to feel not only that my feelings were insignificant, that this incident was trivialized because it happened to me. I was accused of the stereotype of being aggressive. I was also accused of the stereotype of being too sensitive. All stereotypes attributed to Black people in general. And in this case, to me, being the only Black man in the office. Full stop. Finally, I want to be clear about the expected outcome that I expect from this grievance complaint. Number one, I expect an unreserved apology from Karen in relation to this email, the content and its effect. I would like her to take responsibility for this email and make assurances that nobody, not me or any other staff member, will ever be subjected to the level of insult or the type of email that she had sent on so-and-so day. Number two, I would also like to understand what procedures are in place to protect ethnic minorities from such incidents happening where there are racial undertones, full stop. Number three, I will also like to encourage training on unconscious bias. I would also like this training to be done inclusive of everyone, including senior management, full stop. I look forward to hearing from you in regards to my grievance complaint, which is in line with the grievance complaint policy attached. Kind regards, Michael. That's how you send that email. Since you said you want to go all the way you will go. And I will say you do not compromise on the outcomes that you have written down in this email. You know this email, you don't have to go round and round the story, she said, he said, none of that rubbish. Just attach the email because she was stupid enough to send such an email. Therefore, she has to face the disgrace, because this is what I always say, be careful what you put in writing because you never know where it's going to end up. And it's ended up now as a supporting documentation for your grievance complaint. So that's how I would do it. And I would also say that you have to be very, very strong. You are the only Black person in the office. And even though you're working remotely, I'm going to say that when you send this type of email, you're going to set the cat amongst the pigeons, as they say. And everybody is going to be awkward. They're going to treat you like you have leprosy. Yeah, they're going to treat you. Because I feel like when racist white people, and every time I make reference to white people, I'm specifically talking to racist white people, okay? When racist white people are confronted with their racism, their unconscious bias, and their deplorable behavior towards ethnic minorities and Black people specifically, they become aggressive in nature, in how they deal with you, how they talk to you. That's where you see a lot more of the microaggressions as well. You know, you can't quite put your finger on it, but you know it's a microaggression. If you check season 1, I actually talk about micro versus macroaggressions. Now, even though I talk about this podcast, and this podcast I've been, unwavering. This podcast is 2 Black women, 4 Black women, about Black women. That doesn't mean Black men can't listen to the podcast and can't learn something. It's just that I pick Black women first, and then I pick all Black people afterwards, and then everybody else. So I would definitely say to this young lady, please make sure your brother-in-law listens to this podcast episode. He needs to listen. It's not enough for him to just take the letter and be writing. He needs to listen to it, because I think he needs to get the context in which I'm positioning this letter. Now, What I am expecting is for senior management to get so unnerved by this that they take a personal interest in the outcome of this. You need to stick to your guns with what you want. And you need to use this as an opportunity, as a learning lesson to each and every one of them about how to deal with members of staff, and even more so, the detrimental result of gaslighting somebody just because they're the only one. Do you understand? You are the only one, but you don't know about the next recruits that are coming after you who may be black. If you don't set the example of how you expect to be treated in white organizations, they will treat you anyhow, and they will not treat you how they would treat each other. Do you understand? This whole bullshit, people say, I don't see color. If you do not see color, you do not see me, because I am a black woman. So when you tell me you don't see color, that cannot be used as an excuse or to excuse you from possibly being accused of racism. Because being unconsciously biased because of the color of my skin is still a form of racism. Do you understand? So when I'm speaking about this and when I'm positioning this letter in the way in which I am, it's also to get people moving and to take this situation seriously. And the reason is because they've been gaslighting you. They don't think you're going to do anything, because there has been situations that have been leading up to this. There is no way I will ever accept that this particular Karen or the white people in your workplace in general just woke up and decided that they were going to act a certain way. Do you understand? This has been a progression, and it came to a head and accelerated, and then Karen decided to put it in an email. So I think now you have to meet her where she is, and she's decided to put her leg in dog shit. Therefore, you need to roll up them trousers and go step in the dog shit like her and say, you wanna be in dog shit? I'ma smother you in that dog shit. Do you understand what I'm trying to say to you? I feel like sometimes in organizations, and I think it's about taking these calculated risks, that you have to almost put yourself in an uncomfortable situation by having those uncomfortable discussions, and usually it's by a grievance complaint. There was earlier episode in season 1 where I spoke about a young lady in the sales team that basically told me she's not taking my fucking advice, or she said something fucking about how I was delivering advice to her. She swore at me. Of course she swore at me, because it's my advice that she said she don't fucking want. No problem. When I made a grievance complaint to Human Resources tried to tell me that this young white lady didn't swear at me, she swore at the situation. So number one, this HR person wasn't there. So she's telling me basically, she's gaslighting me, number one. Number two, she's standing witness of a situation she wasn't even present for. And number three, you've got two white women, the salesperson and Human Resources, telling the only black woman that was in that office that basically is in my head. I had to teach them a lesson. I was just looking at them and I even corrected her. I said, no, because homie over here has agreed that she swore. So it doesn't matter if it's who, at, or why. She swore, and we're in a professional environment. She swore at me because I gave her advice. Full stop. I don't need to know your opinion. When I told them what I wanted out of the grievance complaint, in the grievance, they knew I didn't. She had to write me a letter. Like, I weren't playing around, because you do not do that to people. And I felt like if I set the example with this young lady, she will go and tell her other colleagues, and they'll deal with me different. And from that blessed day, they dealt with me different, because they realized, you know what? Toya, number one, she will take it as far as it needs to go, number one. Number two, she doesn't care if she's in the minority. She's happy to stand by herself. And number three, she'll stick to her guns. Simple. Because I feel like with racist white people, there needs to just be one example. Once you've given that one example, it's like they go and tell everybody. Before you know, they've already told everybody. And everybody now will deal with you different. Even the approach will be different. And unfortunately, you should just be respected because you're a member of staff. Not because now you've had to put your fork in the ground. But there are some example organizations where you have to set an example. This happens to be the example that you need to set. And you need to be unwavering, clear, and consistent in how you deal with this situation. So, I have loads more dilemmas in my mailbox, but however, I feel like we're running out of time, so I will save them for next week's episode by the grace of God. Please, 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 when you're sending me a dilemma, I want to know what your objective is. What is it that you're trying to get out of a situation that you're in. What would be a utopia situation? And the reason I ask that is it will help me guide how I advise you, or how strongly I advise you, or if I'm asking you to write a letter, then how it will be worded. I want to also say, by the time you listen to this episode, it will be my birthday. Yes. A young budding somebody was born on the 6th of October. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be on holiday. I had planned to not even be in the country. So I am really disappointed. And rather than go out, like my birthday's on a Tuesday, it's like, I'm just going to spend it at home and I'm just going to relax and be lazy, watch films, get some snacks, and really just kind of reflect on the last 12 months and, you know, show gratitude is what I'm going to do. I would also, as I always do, want to thank each and every one of you guys for supporting and listening to the podcast. I really want to read something out that I received today. And I think this is a reminder to me of the impact that the Toya Talks platform has. And even though, you know, I do the podcast every week, there's so much work that happens behind the scenes. I've got the masterclasses on the toyatalks.com website and so much more. I think transforming the working lives of Black women has always been the objective of the Toya Talks platform. And I have Black women all over the world that reach out to me. And as they reach out to me, they access the platform and they really utilize the advice and the examples and the podcast and the masterclasses, and are really seeing the differences in their working life. And that is what motivates me. That's why I get up and show up each and every time for Toya Talks. So let me read this message I received. Afternoon, Toya. I just wanted to let you know I've started my first day at a so-and-so organisation. Months before, I wrote to you saying I'm trying to get out of this particular industry or this particular organisation, and you advised me to change up my CV because I was only getting particular roles. I did so, and nearly immediately I got recruited for this position. In moments of fear throughout the whole process, I thought, what would Toya advise? I listened to your podcast hours before my interview to calm me down. You really are the big sister helping us all out. I'm so grateful to God for you. I pray he blesses you abundantly and gives you as he gives to us so freely. Thank you for all that you have done. And when I read that message, it really did warm my heart. And, you know, I remember this young lady, she reached out to me and she was like, you know, Toya, I'm getting these type of jobs. I'm trying to come out of this particular sector in my industry. How do I do it? And immediately I knew it was her CV that was the issue. And it wasn't difficult. You know, she was very open and I gave her the advice. I told her about the masterclasses, and here she is in a job that she really loves. And she remembered, you know, the platform on her first day. And even as she was going through the process, she knew that there's material out there, i.e. the podcast episodes, that will help her get through her interviews. And here she is, the first day of work, and she's, you know, showing a thankful heart. And I really appreciate it. And each and every one of you that reaches out to me, there is so many of you that reach out to me and tell me how the platform has transformed your working life. And honestly, it really makes my heart dance, and it really makes what I'm doing even more worth it. I also received another message. Now, I receive a lot of DMs, but this will serve as an example to you that this podcast platform is for Black women, and then Black men, and then everybody else. And I have a lot of white listeners. I have a lot of ethnic minority listeners, just generally people who are looking to educate themselves as well as kind of benefit from what the platform offers. So a young lady wrote to me and she said, you teach me so much and I feel very guilty for being white and part of this whole madness, and also that I didn't know to what extent Black people suffer on a daily basis because of my own privilege. So I wrote back to the young lady and say, hey, my lovely, no need to feel guilty at all. The fact that you are willing to be educated and understand how your white privilege is a privilege Black people don't have is a step in the right direction. My best friend is a white woman, and honestly, she self-educates, and we have open and frank discussions and conversations. In the rooms I'm not in, she speaks up, which is an ally. And, you know, she wrote back to me. And I wanted to read that out because I do have a lot of white women or white people in general, that access the platform. And I do get a lot of messages like that, where they feel guilty, or they talk about how they're educating themselves. And I would go ahead and say this: it's not about feeling guilty. And I don't, for me, when I'm talking about the issues that Black women face every day in the workplace, it's not to make any other race feel guilty. It is, however, to create awareness, and it is, however, to create a safe space for that type of conversation. And you know that thing, oh, I've got a white best friend, I've got a Black best friend. It's true, I have a white best friend, she's a white woman. Now, she had the advantage of growing up in North London, Tottenham, and we didn't actually grow up together. I met her later on in life, but the fact is, she grew up in Tottenham, so she was really exposed to how her white privilege has privileged her, but more importantly, how her white privilege has not been any privilege that has been shared by anyone who's Black. And often, whenever we're on holiday and maybe somebody is racially discriminating against me, before I have a chance to say anything, she is an ally that will fight for me. In the rooms where I am not in, she fights. And I know that because I've seen it, I've heard it. And I think that we all need to be in a state of education. And education I'm talking about is understanding that no one is trying to say that no one's trying to say that you should feel guilty for your white privilege. But if you want to be an ally, these are the ways that you're going to do it. And these are the ways that you should do it. And understanding what that privilege has given you over and beyond people who are non-white. And I think in having those open, frank and open conversations, we're creating some racial harmony, where harmony will arise when conversation is allowed to be had. Because in that conversation comes education. From that education comes awareness. From that awareness comes responsibility. And I definitely believe that we need white people to be white and non-Black people to be our allies. Because if we're talking about making a way where there has not been, it has to be the people of privilege who already hold those seats that will be able to assist us in making a way, in understanding racial harmony and fairness. And more importantly, talking about the systematic racism and the disparity between the Black community and the white community, or other communities where Black people are underrepresented. And this leads me to something else in terms of education. June Sarpong, if you know who June Sarpong is, or if you don't, know who June Sarpong is. When I was younger, June Sarpong was literally the only Black woman presenter on TV. And she is a business owner. I know that she's the head of diversity at BBC at the moment. She is a trailblazer, a businesswoman. She is absolutely amazing. And I always grew up watching June Sarpong, feeling like, at least there's somebody like me that looks like me on TV, aside from the Oprahs and things like that. But I mean, in the UK, it was June Sarpong. And she actually released a book on the 1st of October called The Power of Privilege, How White People Can Challenge Racism. And I'm listening to it on Audible. It's available on Amazon and Audible. And so far, it's a really good read. What I'm planning to do is, once I finish listening to it, I will do a review on it and we will discuss it here and see what, gems we can take into the workplace as we navigate the workplace safely. And, there is so much information. And what I've now realized and seen actually is that I have less people asking me to educate them, but more, what I'm seeing is more white people and non-Black people educating themselves and then coming back and wanting to have the conversation, which I think is amazing. Also as well, I want to wish you guys a happy Black History Month. October is our month and we will be celebrating Black History Month here on the Toy Talks platform. Please look out on my social media handles because I'll be running a competition. You guys remember on the 1st of August, I launched my Toy Talks apparel, which sold out within 72 hours. However, I retained a couple of pieces for gifting only, and I actually bought my own pieces so I could gift them. Can you imagine? For gifting purposes. So I will be running competitions on my platform. So if you don't already, make sure you follow me on Instagram, Toya_Washington or Toya_Talks, or on Twitter, Toya_W, or of course Snapchat, Toya Washington, all one word. And I will be doing a competition to win one of the apparel all of the apparel pieces that I have left. I think there's like 4 in total. On there. Also as well, this week I'm planning to If you go on the toytalks.com website, you see my masterclasses for Black History Month only. I will be doing 50% off all my masterclasses. That's the CV masterclass, negotiation masterclass, interview masterclass, mother and daughter masterclass. I'll be doing that 50% off for Black History Month only. So yeah, guys, I think I'm going to draw this episode to a close. And as always, thank you guys for listening. Thank you to all the new listeners as well, because I've got quite a few new listeners or new people also who have connected on social media and are really enjoying and benefiting from the podcast and the platform. If you want further information about Toy Talks, go on www.toytalks.com. Guys, my name is Toy Washington. And I've delivered this to you, the first episode of Black History Month. If you are listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review the podcast. It really helps me out. I read all your reviews. Unfortunately, I can't reply to all the reviews, but I do read them, and it helps people who maybe are coming across the podcast for the first time. It would be really good if you could leave a review, and if that could be the review that entices somebody to listen to the podcast, that would be amazing. I want to thank each and every one of you for your support, your ongoing support, your love, your encouragement, and more importantly, for sharing the podcast. You guys are the reason why the listenership, if that's a word, has been increasing on the podcast, and the access to the platform, and just people being aware that this platform exists. This platform is so important for the lives of Black women in the workplace as they navigate the world of work and light up the path of their success. Thank you so much for listening. I will catch you again next week, Tuesday, for another episode of the Toy Talks podcast. My name is Toy Washington, and you have been listening to the Toy Talks podcast.